I call this meeting to order of the Marshalltown City Council. We are in the City Hall Council Chambers, 10 West State Street. It is October 10th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. Notice to the public. The Mayor and City Council welcome comments from the public during discussion of any agenda items. You are required to step to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and limit the time that used to present your remarks to 3 minutes or less in order for others to be given the opportunity to speak. All speakers shall speak clearly and direct their comments to the Mayor and City Council and not to any councilor specifically. It is at the discretion of the Mayor and the Council to respond to any specific questions and comments or to have staff respond during the meetings. And if you are willing and able, would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to roll call.
Hoop.
Here.
Isom. Kell.
Here.
Bodyhoff.
Here.
Schneider.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Okay. Do any of the councilors have any comments?
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
Had an interesting conversation this weekend with a young lady, and she brought up the point, and again, I reminded her that the city really doesn't have involvement with the veterans home. Plus, it's a state government organization. But she made a good point. She said, we bend over backwards to keep the largest employees in town and do what we can to solve problems for them and help them solve problems. So through the conversation, she said, there's, I don't know, Dex might be able to help me, 800 employees out there, something like that, more? Okay. So that would be equivalent of Lennox, I don't know, what's Emerson have now, Mike?
Oh boy, probably 1,000.
Yeah, so the point was being made that this is a major employer in town, and I told her that, there's not much we can do except maybe if the mayor could draft a letter and all the councilors could sign it, that, we have support and we too want to see a stop to the revolving door out there. I mean, I'm open for ideas if anybody's got any, but it just brought it home that yes, the Veterans Home is a major employer. We don't want to lose it. I thought I knew everything, and I was proven again that I don't know anything. So anyway, so if anybody's got some ideas, I'm open to what we can do. So thanks, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anyone else? I did have a thought today, and it was because trick-or-treat is coming on uptown. I got to thinking back since about the 4th of July. Since the 4th of July, Marshalltown has had Ridiculous Days, 13th Street Harvest Days, Oktoberfest, Homecoming Parade and festivities, 13th Street Heritage Day, and then we're going to have the trick-or-treat uptown and the holiday stroll. Now, if you can't have fun in Marshalltown, I just don't think you can have fun. There's an awful lot of people that are really doing great work putting all these events on, and it shows just what a good town that we have here. Okay, moving on to consent agenda. I have been requested to remove item number 9. Do I hear a motion to approve consent agenda except for number 9?
I'd make that motion, Your Honor.
I have a motion.
Second, Your Honor.
I have a second. Any questions or comments? Roll call.
Walker.
Yes.
Hoop.
Yes.
Kell.
Yes.
Bodyhoff.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Okay, would you like to read those?
Approve the minutes for the September 26, 2022 meeting in the bill list in amount of $2,273,230.55. Appoint Mahala Cassidy Doyle to the Planning and Zoning Commission, term ending April 1st, 2027. Resolution 2022 268, approving contract change order number 4 for the box culvert repairs project number SMW 20003, a decrease of $3,128. Resolution 2022-269, approving contract change order number 3 for the Elks Park grading and ADA accessibility project number PRK 21002. Resolution 2022-270, approving engineer's statement of completion and accepting Construct Inc. Elks Park grading and ADA being project number PRK 21002. Resolution 2022-271, approving an engagement letter with Bond Counsel Dorsey and Whitney LLP for a 2022A and 2022B general obligation bond issuances. Resolution 2022-272, to name bank depositories, establish maximum deposit amounts, and identify positions authorized to conduct business on behalf of the City of Marshalltown. Resolution 2022-273, setting date for the public hearings and additional action on proposals to enter into general obligation loan agreements and to borrow money thereunder.
Okay. Moving to item number 9.
Resolution 2022-274, approving the Marshall County Municipal Mutual Aid Agreement.
Motion to approve, Your Honor.
I have a motion for approval.
Second.
Second.
Your Honor?
Yes.
The reason I asked this be removed is I had a request from a citizen who would like to make a comment on this resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Mark Eaton, 1007 South 10th Avenue. So we've been talking a lot about the load on the fire department, and this agreement basically binds the fire department to service areas outside of its jurisdiction if requested to. For example, College View Lane is serviced by Haverhill Fire Department. Odessa Drive is serviced by Haverhill Fire Department. 4 properties on Summit Street are serviced by Albion. Most of those fire departments evidently might need service to service those. Lynch Dallas said that Haverhill was unable to service the 2 properties on the south end of town when they requested severance. So it looks like the properties on College View Lane could be using Marshalltown's service. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? Anything from the council? Let's have roll call.
Lottie
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to resolutions.
Resolution 2022-275, accepting bid and authorizing the award of contract for the Marshalltown South 7th Avenue Extension Project number ECO 22001 in the city of Marshalltown, Iowa, in the amount of $764,476.
A motion from the council?
I'd make that motion, Your Honor. Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Good evening, Heather Thomas, Public Works. We received 4 bids last Tuesday. We did reject 2 of them. The low bid was Construct. It was pretty good underneath our estimate. Their bid was about $764,000. Of that, about $672 is the city's share, as there is a public-private partnership. We are recommending award tonight for Construct with a substantial completion date of May of next year, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
So I assume the construction will start yet this fall?
If provided materials can get on site, that is the intent. This project is a public-private partnership. We're understanding that the private developer is planning on starting yet in October, and they'll be doing some rough grading prior to Construct going in and with utilities.
There wasn't the original estimate around $900,000.
That's correct, $957,000. Yep,
So we did good.
we did very good.
Yeah. Okay.
Your Honor?
Yes.
So Heather, it's not going to snow this winter, so can't we get it done this year?
I feel like if I say anything to that, I'll jinx it. So I don't think it's possible to get done this year, but I hope it's a mild winter and construction can keep going.
Anything else from the council? Anything from the public? Let's have roll call.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie Hoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Okay. Resolution number 2.
Public hearing and resolution 2022-276 approving development agreement with Carl of Marshalltown LLC, authorizing annual appropriation tax increment payments and pledging certain tax increment revenues to the payment of the agreement.
Make the motion to approve, Your Honor.
Have a motion? Oh. Okay. I'm going to declare the public hearing open. Do we have any written comments on this?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Do we have any public comments? Okay. Staff review.
Yes, Your Honor. This is the final step in the development agreement with Carlo of Marshalltown pledging rebate of incremental taxes not to exceed $1.8 million over a 10-year period. This is on a sliding scale. One thing to note in this agreement that was a change is that they have not had approval yet from Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and we originally had an end of 2023 completion date for that portion of the project. They did ask that we move that back to December 31st of 2024, which we have, though we think that the construction could easily be completed before that time, but we do not have that site plan yet. And then that then moved back sort of a date where they can decide when to start the TIF. And so they have until basically October of 2025 to give us the notification that they would like to start.
Anything from the public? Okay, anything, council comments? Okay, I call the meeting closed at 5:41 p.m. and move on to the resolution.
Now I'd like to make the motion, Your Honor.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second? Any other comments from the council? Yeah, let's have roll call now.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
No.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie Hoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to call the public hearing and resolution open for approving plans, specifications, form of contract, and cost for the Veterans Memorial Coliseum Generator Project in the city of Marshalltown, Iowa, being project number C0L22001 at 5:42. Do we have any written comments?
No, Your Honor.
Does anyone have any public comments? Hearing none. I declare does the council have any comments?
Staff review.
Oh, staff review. Yeah, I suppose staff review.
Good evening, Heather Thomas, Public Works. This project is for the addition of a generator for the Coliseum. When the Coliseum was recently renovated, it was wired in for a generator, but the generator was not part of that project. So this is for a 300 kilowatt generator, and the estimated cost is $260,000. The city has received $135,000 of grants towards this project, with the hope of, once awarding, going ahead and requesting additional grant funds, which we can't do until we have awarded. The completion date on this is March of next year, which is very short. With the supply chain, we anticipate that not being able to be met, but we can't request an extension on the grant until after the project is awarded. And so we have detailed that out in the specifications for the bidders so that they realize the supply chain won't result in liquidated damages. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Your Honor.
Yes.
And Heather, would you remind the public, this will be on the west side of the building?
This will be on the west side of the building, just north of the alley. There's a little island right there with some rock in it. That island will be expanded just a little bit to fit the generator, but it'll stay set in that spot.
What kind of runtime will this generator have?
It should be able to run indefinitely during it. It's a natural gas generator. Diesel.
Yeah, that's
with fuel.
So how much capacity is the tank if diesel can't be delivered?
I would have to go back and look at that, but I'd be happy to follow up with you after the meeting.
To build on that, we went with diesel versus natural gas because City Hall and the Carnegie Building are both run off of diesel. So in an event that's probably running, all three of them would be running, and we would be getting a delivery somewhere to this general area.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because I remember the tornado at work. We have natural gas generator, and it doesn't work well when you don't have natural gas service.
Anyone else have any questions for Ann? Okay. I declare the public hearing closed at 5:45 PM. Move on to the resolution,
Resolution 2022-277, approving plan specification, form of contract, and cost for the Veterans Memorial Coliseum Generator Project in the city of Marshalltown, Iowa, being project number COL 22001.
So move.
Second, Your Honor.
Have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Have roll call.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie Hoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Okay, moving on to ordinances.
Ordinance 15049 to amend the Code of Ordinances, City of Marshalltown, Iowa, Chapter 76, Traffic Schedules, Schedule 4, Stop Intersections, third reading.
So moved, Your Honor.
There a motion for approval?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second.
Good evening, Heather Thomas, Public Works. This is a third reading to add stop signs throughout town. We discussed 26 of them previously at the first and second reading. I am proposing one additional with this one. We have not yet accepted these streets as public streets, but do anticipate doing so within the next month, so we just want to proactively put a stop sign in. So we're recommending the addition of an eastbound stop sign on Woodside Drive at Knollway Drive. This is part of the Glenwood 7th edition, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Woodside Drive or Merle Hibbs?
Woodside Drive is the east-west road that tees off and goes to the west on Knollwood Drive, that's being connected between Merle Hibbs and Southridge.
Okay, I didn't know that was the name of that street.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Heather, I didn't look at the list in detail. Are we putting one on Creekside too right now?
I did not have that on my list. That's a great question. We have also not accepted that infrastructure, so that would be coming forth as well. If you'd like to make that recommendation now, we can go ahead and make that recommendation. I don't have a final name on that road. We have requested them to review the naming on that road.
I'm okay with waiting. I mean, it's going to be next year before the first house is built, so I'm okay with waiting on that one.
Okay.
Anything else for Howard? Anything from the public? Let's have roll call.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie Hoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Moving on.
Ordinance 15051 to amend the Code of Ordinances, City of Marshalltown, Iowa, Chapter 73, Recreational Vehicles, to prohibit the use of all-terrain vehicles and off-road utility vehicles, third reading.
Make the motion to approve, Your Honor.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Anyone from the public have any questions or comments? Anything from the council? Let's have roll call.
Lottie Hoff,
No.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay. Next ordinance.
Ordinance 15052 to amend the Code of Ordinances, City of Marshalltown, Iowa, Chapter 73, Recreational Vehicles, to prohibit the use of golf cars, second reading.
I would move for approval.
Second.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. Anything from the public?
Serena Stabenow, 1403 West Main. You've heard me say this before. You've heard Tupper say this before. We can't even enforce the ordinance that we have with golf carts. Kids take it upon themselves. They push the limit. They get in golf carts and they go. I understand what you're trying to do, but it's a bad idea. And when a child gets killed, your child a grandchild, it's a bad idea. We all know it. The police have enough to do. And they've already said they don't even have time for mental health, and police shouldn't be in mental health. We don't even need a child on a golf cart. Bad idea.
The ordinance says that it's prohibiting
Okay,
the use of golf carts.
so sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Anybody else from the public? Anything from the council?
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
After we had the last reading, I reached out to several people, on both sides of it, and I will be changing my vote tonight. I was convinced that it is the law now. I mean, I knew that, and it's allowed now, and I was convinced that in spite of some concerns, that there have not been the issues we thought there would be, and I will be voting no on this one tonight because I work for the citizens of Marshalltown, and the majority said continue to allow the golf cars, and they told me we can always go back and revisit it if it becomes an issue. So I'm listening to the public tonight on this one.
Thank you, Counselor. Anything else? Anything else from the public? Let's have roll call.
Thompson,
No.
Walker,
No.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottiehoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
No.
Motion failed. By a 3-3 vote, correct? Okay. Moving forward to discussion, secondhand dealers and pawnbrokers. And we have Officer West.
Good evening, Chris.
What? Okay, Captain.
Captain Jones?
It's okay. Chris Jones, Captain of Support Administrative Services or Operational Services for the Police Department. I'm here to talk about and continue the discussion about secondhand ordinance. On September 13th, we had an opportunity to sit down with some business owners at the police department with a couple council members and kind of talk about both sides of the issue. And during that meeting, we were able to come, in my opinion, able to come to a consensus about our needs from the police department standpoint and utilizing technology to help further our ability to investigate burglary and theft in our community. And then also kind of balance that with the business owners' need to have a timely and easy service for them to provide that information to us. In doing so, I was able to modify the current ordinance that I supplied back in August with some minor modifications. In the current ordinance that I had provided that was available in your packet, we had moved to eliminate clothing as an item that we were going to require, mainly because of the business owner's burden of logging all of that information, and it would be, once again, probably difficult to identify that clothing with items that are taken. Along those lines, we are expecting our officers and investigators to follow up if clothing's taken or a large amount of clothing are taken, where we have the ability to identify those items to make sure that they reach out to the consignment dealers and dealers in town that do those businesses. The other aspect is we look to remove albums, music, video games, computer software, and similar items from that reported list for the same reason. The items that are being taken in by business owners in bulk would be time-consuming and labor-intensive for them to log that information for us versus the benefit that we would get out of much outdated, at this point, with outdated albums and the uniqueness of many of those items. One of the things that came up during the meeting was allowing or including antique dealers into this discussion. And one of the things that we did from a police department standpoint is I went back and looked for calls to our service and items that have been reported to us. We had one case where we had antique items taken this year and 2 last year. So from the standpoint that is manageable for us to be able to go to the antique dealers here in town. And most of the time when antiques are taken, and specifically the ones that were reported, they're very detailed in what is taken, and it's easy to identify those items. To help, I guess, come to some concession about some of the items specifically related to clothing and consignment that would be taken, there was an agreement from the police department standpoint and local business owners that we would create a $100 minimum threshold for fashion accessories, which would include purses, bags, costume jewelry, shoes, things that would be necessarily provided from a designer standpoint that would be reported to our online system for us to be able to track who were bringing those items in. Following the meeting and the revised ordinance, I went to all of the known stakeholders in town, provided them with the ordinance and the date and time for the city council meeting, continue the discussion. So I'd be open for any additional questions or
Your
further
Honor,
discussion.
could you remind us what your external group consisted of? We had a lot of public business owners come and voice their concerns, and I can hear that you've obviously made some concessions for some of those folks trying to operate. But who ended up coming to the table?
David Hesmer from Action Auto came. John Blaybaum had come. Jay Paglia, who had brought the pawn shop version of the discussion. Rita Schmidt and her husband were there. Vic Helberg was there. And then Councilman Lottie Hoff and Kel.
Very good, thanks.
Your group really had a good discussion. Everyone really tried to make it work, and so that it was really pretty much a win-win situation. The business owners understood what the police department really needed and what would help them, but then also the police department realized that some of the items are very unique and different, and how we can make it work for Marshalltown. So that was really a good.
And Jay Paglia from the pawn shop gave a great insight of how because he's currently using the technology and how it's working to help him prevent theft. And we all came to a consensus that maybe there's other things that we can do as a group to maybe form an informal association to help build the idea that people can't come to Marshalltown and fence stolen property or sell stolen property. So I was very impressed with the resolution that we came from. I have not heard any other feedback since the meeting, and it was open for emails or phone calls, and I have not received any feedback since then. So.
Not a question, but I'd like to commend you, Captain Jones, and the business owners. As everyone alluded, it was a very collaborative meeting. It was open. Discussion or concerns were brought up. Robust discussion was had, but in the end, came to a workable solution. So kudos and congrats on that.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Chris, it's my understanding that Matt up at Black Tire Bike uses a similar software program to check serial numbers on bikes. Now, is he going to have to do both on this?
If he is buying items to sell back, other than trade-in, then he would have to use the software that we provided. If the software that he's using would automatically upload to the software we're providing, that would be useful for him.
Yeah, and I don't know if it does or not.
I don't know either.
If he's got a he's got to duplicate. And then the other thing, the feedback I got back after the meeting that you guys had was, and probably a great idea, was some kind of stickers in the windows, signage, letting everyone know that we're going to log this stuff, we're going to check this stuff, and that should deter a lot of people right there from coming to Marshalltown to try and fence items. So
I agree.
I got some positive feedback. It sounds good. You guys did a good job getting everybody together.
And from the police department standpoint, if we're looking at doing stickers and providing that informal association, we'll take care of all of those expenses and everything that needs to go with doing that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would you say that everybody who's kind of who has voiced opposition to this in the past is becoming on board with this now?
I believe so, for the most part. I think the biggest building block right now is that it's new, and even though many of the business owners they're doing what is required, they're just doing it in a different way. So this would require them to either upload information or enter information into a computer versus maybe in a notebook or on a business card. They're all doing what they need to be doing. It's just where they're going to put that information so we can use it.
Anything else from the council? Anything from the public? Questions, comments? Okay.
Your Honor.
What do you- yes.
So that was I think you were going to ask Jessica the same thing are we going to see the revised ordinance next meeting then?
I would appreciate if someone did make a motion and then followed by a second to place this on an item on its first reading at the next meeting.
Then I would make that motion to direct staff to get that revised ordinance to us so we can take a look at it at the next
Have a
meeting.
motion?
It would be the ordinance that's in the packet currently. Clear, there's not anything else based on the conversation that I believe we would change.
That's exactly right. The ordinance was submitted in the packet as the ordinance that I had delivered to the business owners.
So this one is the new revised one after the meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Let's have roll call.
Bodyhoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to discussion, rental housing inspection program.
Good evening, Michelle Sponheimer, Housing Community Development Director. So this is an item that we've had conversation about for probably the past year or so or longer even. We started with our strategic planning sessions. We talked about the rental inspections programs and what the future may hold for that with anticipated retirement pending. We don't have a formal notice, but with an anticipated retirement, we knew that this is an opportunity to kind of look at this program and how we have it structured, similar to what we had conversations about our building inspections program when we had a retirement in January with our building official. We wanted to be thinking about our budget overall. The rental inspection program is one of our general fund accounts, similar to our building inspection, and thinking about where opportunities to make some adjustments might be. And one of those that we had conversation about was how we staff and operate this program. Currently, we run with two full-time rental housing inspectors. They both serve primarily the rental inspections program, which is our municipal inspections for the city of Marshalltown. So all as a city with our population, we're required by state law to have a rental inspections program. And so with that, we are inspecting properties approximately every 3 years. Certainly the past few years with the disasters have caused some challenges with that between the tornado, derecho, and COVID, impacting our abilities to get into some of those units. Previously, those two inspectors also worked with a state-led program for some of their time. That's a program that we do not administer anymore on behalf of the state with our CLIP agency. So there were some duties a few years back that shifted. They also do cover partial time to do inspections in a 3-county jurisdiction for Marshall, Tama, and Hardin County for our Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. So that's our rental assistance program that we operate using federal dollars. So when they're doing that work for that inspection program, they're actually paid out of that federal grant dollars rather than the general fund account for the rental inspections. So they have some different time that they do bill to different programs depending on what we may have operating. But right now, like I said, we do have 2 full-time employees in those positions. What we discussed at strategic planning and what I am bringing forward for you for consideration would be to think about that implementation and moving to contracted services for some of our regular inspections. I won't say annual, but our every 3-year type of inspection model that we've been under. And we would still maintain one full-time staff inspector, because we do need to do all of the Section 8 housing inspections in that 3-county area. So that does require travel time and administrative to review those some 300 units that we have on that program currently. With our code, we are also looking at the opportunity to update our code. So we have a rental housing code that's adopted that's kind of been at the foundation of the HUD guidelines for housing quality standards, which is a very basic level housing code. We have adopted other things over time and implemented certain policies based on electrical codes, fire codes, building, plumbing, those type of things that we implement, property maintenance, nuisance. Those are things that my inspectors also look for. One of the things that we're proposing to do is actually adopt the International Property Maintenance Code to serve as our rental housing code. I do anticipate we'll probably have some amendments to that, like we do most of our official code adoptions. We often have amendments that we may make. I don't have those specifically outlined yet. We'll look and see what are some of the things that we maybe are doing with our current codes that maybe aren't covered that we want to continue to do, or if there are things that we need to exclude that aren't maybe relevant to our area. So I don't expect there to be a lot, but there may be a couple things based on history that we want to include. With that adoption of the code, that will put us, I think, more in line with our international code adoptions for all of our codes, with the building, the plumbing, fire, and some of those things that we have adopted or will be adopting. So that should just align things a little more evenly with those adoptions than compared to some of the maybe uniqueness that fell under some of the HUD standards. HUD standards will still apply for my Section 8 housing program that we operate, because we can't avoid those under the HUD assisted programs. Units that are here in town actually get inspected for both programs. So they would be inspected by a city inspection as well as that HUD inspection, because those timings are sometimes differently equated as to when we need to get in there to a unit. And that's why we bill those out separately, so that they're not paying for HUD isn't paying for a city inspection, and the city owners aren't paying for a HUD inspection if they're not doing HUD. So that's why we do all that billing out separately. So what I would like to, present to you today, and certainly answer any kind of initial questions. I included in the memo a timeline for you as to how we would anticipate kind of working through this process, starting today with just kind of that continued discussion on the proposal. We would look to issue a RFP for inspection services. My intention would be that would go out this week, so that we could solicit proposals from inspection firms that can do the housing inspections. They would need to be, some of the things we'd be looking for is making sure that they're qualified to do not only on the rental housing, but also being familiar with plumbing and electrical. Right now, this is something that we, like for a new unit, or if there's a concern on a property, we're actually calling in the plumbing inspector, we're calling in the city electrician to look at those kind of things separately. So you have the potential of having 3 individuals at a property. My goal with this would be that we really condense that down to just one that has that qualification to be looking at all those items as one at one time. We would notify all the active property owners, of which we have around 400 or so, I believe, right now, of our proposed changes, certainly giving them a chance to participate in any conversation, comments, questions that they may have about this. through the formal process of adoption, as well as just directly to me if they have anything that they're concerned about. At our next council meeting, should you want to have further discussion, we have that opportunity to do that. We would propose that RFPs would be due at the beginning of November on the 2nd. And then that following week, we could hold interviews and do a review process of those proposals that come forward. Anticipate a small review team that might need to do that, similar as what we did with our building inspection process. Then on the 14th, award contract for services and also begin the adoption of the International Property Maintenance Code, plus any amendments or exceptions that we include in that. As an ordinance change, that is, of course, 3 readings, which we know, and I would anticipate fully doing those readings and giving that opportunity for any comment. We would also have some fee changes that we would anticipate as part of this change. Currently, our fees are billed, we do an annual registration fee annually, and that's a calendar year basis. One goal that we have had is to bring that back in line with a fiscal year process. And thank you. I'm so used to getting that phone. So switching that to be on a fiscal year basis, so we would actually have some change where the 6 months here where we're transitioning, we would work through that. Our new fees would start July 1st for the registration piece, and those would likely, we would anticipate, be reduced from where they are now, and then we would begin charging an inspection fee the year that you actually get inspected. So if you get inspected, you're paying an inspection fee, which covers the cost of the contracted service. There would be probably an administrative component to that for us billing and managing that, because we will be doing the billing of that through the city. We would not expect the contractor to be doing that management of fee. We want to make sure that it's clear that this is a city program and owners are paying those fees to the city, and we are paying for the contractor, so there's no potential conflict there. Currently, our annual registration fee covers those inspections, the first and if needed, a second inspection, and you pay a higher fee every year to do that. So now we would have a lower fee on an annual basis, and you would just pay the inspection fee the year that you actually get an inspection. I anticipate also proposing a structure that if you have a passing inspection that has, very few number of fail items, you may be able to be moved to an extended period for inspection, so you don't have to have as frequent. Whereas if you have a more severe fail items, you may be inspected more frequently. I think that will address some of the concerns we've heard over the years from landlords saying, I keep my units in good condition. I am going in there before you come. I'm always passing my inspection. Yet I'm paying for the same kind of costs, as somebody you're maybe spending more time with. And so this is something that we've seen in other communities where they do have kind of a tiered schedule for inspections based on your frequency of fail items that occur. So we would have a resolution at that final meeting that would also adopt that schedule of fees to go into effect starting January 1st. We would anticipate then notifying owners again of the final actions following all the council action. And that new ordinance, as I said, and program would go into effect January 1st as our anticipated start date. I do anticipate that it would take us a couple months to kind of get on schedule and figure out exactly, who's coming and going at what times and how that process will work. We know the winter months oftentimes are times when we're a little bit slower anyway. And so those are times when we're usually scheduling things. And so that's not much different from how we operate currently. With that, I'd answer any questions that you have.
Your Honor.
Yes.
I understand that it's kind of hard to calculate the total current cost for doing these inspections. And I personally, my view is I really appreciate that this change would hopefully save us some money and get us up to best practices for these inspections. But given what we're currently paying an individual to do this work, plus the fact that we're having to bring in some secondary sources, plumbing, electrical, do you have any guesstimation or estimation regarding what we're currently paying to have this work done versus what we anticipate to come in with an RFP?
I think that's a really tough calculation. It's like comparing apples and oranges, because it's comparing apples and oranges because of the way we're set up benefit-wise and everything. We're not charging a fee to cover our costs currently. So I think that would be different when looking at the private sector to provide a service.
Yeah, I think in general, our revenue that we're seeing annually for the program, I want to say, and Diana, you can correct me if you know, I think it's around 90,000 in that range. And so that's the revenue that we have coming in to support the program. We've gone over the years where we've adjusted the fees to where our expenses, like right now, our expenses are exceeding our revenue. And so we have adjusted that at times. We haven't had a fee increase on the rental side. Last year was the first year in, I think in like 6 years, we had an increase, maybe even longer. And so, you know, we kind of got out of sync, you know, a little bit. So we try to keep it as a generally self-sustaining program as much as possible. But what we don't account for is that time that the electricians and the plumbing staff are spending on those activities. So that's time that ends up being covered under other divisions and isn't directly allocated to this program. I don't know if that helps or not, but
Provide some context. Thank you.
yeah. Our intention in budget purposes was that the revenue that we would get from the annual registration would still sustain the remaining the partial hours of the full-time employee need. Like I said, part of it's being covered under Section 8 federal program, but that the remaining hours that are still dedicated to the program would be covered through the registration fees that we're getting, because they're going to have to track which units are actually active, making sure that they get their inspection done, that they're getting their compliance checks, you know, so because we don't want to miss out on units and have units out there that aren't registered and aren't being inspected. So there's still a lot of administrative time that's going to be spent. We have a lot of time that's spent working with tenants when they come in, they have complaints, concerns about their units, how to talk with their landlord about issues, how to file a complaint, how to work with legal services. So there's a lot of time that's still spent by staff working with people that isn't maybe directly billed to, hey, this particular inspection time. But our thought is that the true inspection time we can more tailor right to, like, hey, this person was out here, it cost this much, you're going to be billed that much, we're paying that much, and it's really a in and out.
Your Honor, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Michelle, I remember when we changed those rates, we tiered those for a number of units, right? Okay.
Yeah, we do have a tiered structure. Whether or not we would continue with a tiered structure, I don't think so, but right now we do, recognizing that if they're going out doing an inspection of a 20-unit complex, there's some efficiencies there when you have one common space, and units are generally smaller than compared to an individual house.
Walk me through, so I have a rental unit, I'm a landlord, I fail, and I failed a second, and I failed a lot in the past. When do you shut me down and evict the renters?
It takes a lot to shut something down. I'll be real honest, right? We go back. We have some units that we might go back 3, 4, 5, 6 times. That's not common, but it's not unheard of. And so we will definitely try to get resolution, especially if the owner is working on things. Right. So when an owner stops working on something and they totally say, I'm not doing it, I'm disregarding you completely, I'm not showing up for the inspection, then our next step is to issue a denial of compliance, saying you are no longer in compliance. Your units need to be vacated within 30 days or brought into compliance. If they're not vacated within 30 days, and that's the owner giving them notice to vacate. If they're not vacated within 30 days, then we will file a municipal infraction. A municipal infraction goes through through the court system, and then we're asking a judge to actually formally say, you must vacate this unit. And that's when the city is actually saying, you got to be out, because we now have a judgment. So those, we've only done a few of those over the years, and they've been in pretty severe cases typically. When we've had complete disregard from an owner, absolutely, like no attention to any of our communication, or trying to resolve issues.
And then how do we fix the problem of people renting properties and not notifying the city that they're a landlord? What is your process in all these changes to fix that?
I don't know that we can ever fully fix that, right? I think there's always going to be a level of having to either that we're notified about rental properties that aren't registered, or that we have found them. Right now, my staff, we check the property transfers, for example, in the paper. We read those to see what properties have transferred. And if we see a property that has transferred to a known rental property owner, and they haven't registered it, we're going to send them a letter, say, hey, we recognize that you just purchased this property. What's your intention with it? We will check the comparison of the county assessor's office and the addresses that are being mailed for versus the address of the property, and look for those discrepancies. So we do have some proactive ways in trying to search those. More than anything, though, we probably get it because tenants come in and complain about the condition of a unit, and then we find that it's not registered, or somebody else turns them in. A landlord that is complying, that is following the guidelines, says, it's not fair that somebody else isn't, and here's an address that you need to investigate. And that's how we do it. So it will always be out there. I'm not naive to think that we will always get 100% compliance with this program or any kind of enforcement program. There's always going to be that component of having to go after properties that are not compliant for some reason or another.
Thanks. And if with your indulgence, Your Honor, I have two more questions.
Your Honor, I'd like to ask a question too.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm a big fan of positive incentives. Is there a way that we could label the good rental owners or the addresses so that people who are new to town, who maybe don't know the rental landscape, that they could identify the better apartments and better owners? It would help them command more of a premium and give a little more incentive to the middle tier landlords to keep their properties up.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I don't know 100% that answer. I will say that our inspection records are always open to the public, right? These are public records that people can see, and we do get calls from people who say, can you tell me about this property? We'll share with them. Well, yep, our last inspection passed with no problem, or yes, we've been out there and it's had many failed inspections. I mean, that's something we do answer currently. We don't typically hand out a list. Like I said, we have approximately 3,300 units in our community. So we don't hand that list out and say, here's all the apartments in town. That's just too much to try to maintain from a purpose of I'm looking for a unit. What do you want? What we do usually is we refer landlords to, there is a website through the Iowa Finance Authority called iowahousingssearch.org. It's a free website that landlords can list their properties for rent. We encourage landlords to list their properties there, and we encourage tenants to look there for properties. And then if they have a question about something, let us know. The best thing we can do is say, yes, this person passes inspections, and we do have that. They pass inspections. We try very hard to not do referrals of this is a good landlord or a bad landlord, right? That puts us in a position we don't want to be in.
Well, I was thinking more of the list of if you do delayed inspections because, they always pass, they're always good.
Yeah.
Could that list be publicly available and then used for that purpose?
Yeah, I'm sure we would definitely have that data. So it's probably something that we could create and have. Yeah. Yep.
Your Honor?
Yes.
With several months under our belt with contracted inspection services specific to the building inspections, can you give us a general overview of how that's going and the feedback?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's been going very well. I was hesitant. I think like all of us were a little bit about how will this work. We're changing up a different strategy and doing things. It has worked very well, in my opinion. We have there's a little bit of change in responsiveness sometimes when we had we had a wonderful situation where we had staff that could respond in 10 minutes to things. That is not the norm in any community. And so we do try to encourage, people need to schedule their inspection 24 hours in advance. There are times when the inspectors are here, they may take a phone call, they may still be able to deal with something because they are spending a significant amount of time in town. But getting into that new habit of you got to plan ahead. And most of the time, people know ahead that they are going to be, I'm going to be framing at this point. I'm going to be pouring the foundation on Thursday. They usually can schedule those things. I think we just got a little bit in a routine of being able to call at a drop of a hat and get an immediate response. So that took a little bit of transition. But honestly, I have not received, I can honestly say I have not received any complaints about our inspections transition. It's several of the contractors do work in other communities. They maybe already work with V&K, Stringham, who's doing our contracted services. So they already had relationships with that. I had several who were like, oh yeah, we know those guys. They're great. I work with them all the time. No big deal. So it's gone, in my mind, very well. The permitting process that we do everything electronically. We're sharing stuff via email, and they're processing it, turning back in. We're processing the paperwork and the fees. Then they get a percentage of the fee for that structure. So this, I think, would operate similarly in a lot of ways with that, where we would be feeding them information via email that says, here's the list of properties that are due this year or this quarter or however we decide to do that. Probably work on them on scheduling it, just like the inspections teams that are doing now for building. They schedule their own inspections. We don't schedule them. That allows them to structure their day appropriately. So having now been living with it for almost 10 months, I'd say that it's working pretty smoothly. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Gary?
Thanks, Your Honor. So what's the difference between a Section 8 inspection and just your regular rental inspection?
In town here, we have tried to keep them very consistently the same so that we don't have conflict. Out in the rural areas, we do have some differences that apply, where we don't have, some of the rural areas maybe haven't adopted some of the same electrical or plumbing kind of things that we have in town, as an example. Most of the part, they're pretty similar, but like on Section 8, we also look really strongly about some of more of the tenant behavior kind of things that are going on. So things like hoarding or tenant things that impact, because they're getting a federal assistance, they're getting a rental assistance, the tenant is. And so they need to comply with things in order to continue to receive that. That we may, I won't say we don't look at as severely in town, because we do think about certain levels of that when we get where it might be a fire risk or something like that. But they're also looking at who's living in this household and, should they be there or not be there. So there's a little bit difference there in those inspections.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Your Honor.
Okay. So what are you looking for us?
I would be just looking for, I guess, a consensus to continue down this path based on this schedule to move forward with an RFP issuance and working towards the adoption of ordinance changes.
I would like to see that as a formal
A motion.
motion to proceed as proposed in the memo on the schedule that was provided.
I make the motion to proceed with the RFP procedures and timeline as outlined.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a second. Any other questions or comments?
Your Honor, are we missing something on this timeline? The council has to give permission to outsource this, correctly?
Yeah, and so that would be the November 14th meeting would be when we would be coming back with the results of the RFP and the recommendation for who to move forward with.
Is that a resolution by itself, or is that just,
Yep, that would be done on a resolution.
so where it
and-
says award contract, that's actually a resolution?
That'd be a resolution, yeah.
Well, as I've said in previous meetings, I don't like outsourcing, because if it saves us money, we shouldn't just stop with building inspections. We shouldn't stop with rental inspections. We might as well outsource all 175 people if it really saves us money. I just don't like it. I mean, if it's truly a cost savings, then why are we stopping with just retirements? Let's just start laying off people and outsourcing across the board. So I don't like it. I'll just say that on record.
Anything from the public? Yes.
Serena Stabenow, 1403 West Main Street. Me and Michelle go back. I've been a landlord since about 2002. Sold my last one 2017. I have been, that landlord that followed all the rules, played by the handbook, was intimidated by the inspectors. So if they were saying that, it takes a long time to, be shut down, then the inspectors will intimidate certain people. So I want to know what landlords are being intimidated and which ones are getting by. An example, I had, like a little tiny thing was going to kill somebody, and it had been there for 60 years. So I would like to know what constitutes, passing, one time and then the next, and then, I get everything taken care of and then come back and then it doesn't pass. So I'd like to know what your list is. Are you going to stand by it? So, Michelle, if you can explain that, because I've been in your office many times.
I believe that is all your code, correct?
Yeah, so we have, with the adoption of the code, it covers a lot of different things. And, we try to put together frequently commonly fail items that occur. Because when you say, like, it has to have passing electrical system, well, what does that entail? Okay, well, that entails we're going to check the outlets that they're grounded correctly, that they aren't broken, that they aren't, so there's a lot of things that aren't specifically outlined in the code that constitute what is a functional appliance, what is a proper working plumbing, right? And so we try to outline those things as much as we can. Certainly we encounter things that aren't going to be on a list that you go, okay, this is an issue, and that's when we, would kind of talk about it and say, well, how do we need to address this? That's common in this industry because you can't address every single thing that you will ever encounter. But we try to do the best we can in doing that. And certainly the goal would be to have kind of a checklist to landlords. Here's what we're going to be looking for. Here's what you need to pre-check for. We kind of already have that right now, a pre-check inspection guideline. This is what you should go around and check and find. We also know that in the course of, especially a 3-year period, the day after we leave a unit, the situation can change, right? A tenant can, punch a hole in a wall. They can tear off, a plumbing can break, things happen and stuff. So situations do change. And so it is not uncommon at all from the time that we pass something to 3 years later for it to fail and to have issues. And some of those are just wear and tear that happen. Some of those are, tenant issues or whatnot. So, but that's why we generally have said, okay, we inspect, and then we know that there's going to be fails. You come back, you re-inspect. I don't expect the majority of units to pass the very first time through. I mean, history has shown us that that's not common. Most of the time we have at least a second inspection. It's when we're going back for a third or a fourth that it starts to become more of a problem.
I know your housing inspectors, they don't seem intimidating to me.
I think that my inspectors do a very hard job. and they deal with very difficult situations. It is a stressful position. I will say that it's one they want my job as little as I want theirs. Some days. So to steal Mike's term right there, I believe that they are rock stars, and they do a very difficult and demanding position that, generally speaking, nobody likes. And I think that's true of many of my positions in my department when we come to enforcement, is we are not well liked for what we do. These are things that we are telling people to repair, fix, change, and follow codes that isn't usually received well. And so I think that they do a nice job in being fair and being treating things equally, even though that's not always agreed upon.
Your Honor? Yes. Michelle, but if I'm going to buy a house and rent it out, if I come to you, you're going to give me kind of a like where the fire extinguishers go, where the CO2 detectors go. There's a cheat sheet, right?
We have a lot of information that we are more than happy to share. We don't do a pre-inspection type of thing for you, but we have a lot of different handouts that are available on our website or that we will give to you. Like I said, those common items, this is what we're looking for, to tell you this is what you should look for in buying it. If it's a property that's not been a rental, we try to tell you these are the common things that we see that we usually experience when we go to a property that's not been a rental before. If it's been a rental before, we'll give you those past inspection booklets if you like, to see what's been the history of a property, so you can tell, has it been registered? That's sometimes how we find, we talked about unregistered rentals, that's sometimes how they come to us, is because somebody comes and says, hey, I'm buying this property, it's a rental unit, the landlord's already renting it, and we say, no, they're not doing it registered. So, and that's a point where a new landlord can come at it and say, okay, well, let's make sure it gets taken care of.
Yeah, I love the idea you're giving information.
Absolutely.
Be proactive. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks,
Welcome.
Your Honor.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone else?
Lee Botter, 401 Orchard Drive. I am a landlord, and we have multiple rentals. To address your question on where do you get information, a lot of things that I do is I get phone calls from real estate agents from out of town, people to say, hey, do you have a rental available? Unfortunately, I don't. We live by the premise that we're going to repair and keep our properties like we would be willing to live in those properties ourselves. That's how we operate. I will, to address Serena's concern, we've got good inspectors here, but there have been a few times that I've been intimidated by the inspectors. But I just go ahead and do the cleanup. I look forward to the fact if it's contracted out, maybe there'll be a little more consistency. And I'll give an illustration, okay? We've had situations where we've had power strips that have been plugged into the wall, and we get dinged on it on one property, and on the other property we don't. And so that is what I deem as a lack of consistency. None of our basements are finished, so there might be storage down there. There might be a bed leaning up against the wall, and we get dinged about, oh, you're trying to have a bedroom down there, and it's just storage, dinged on one property, not another property. So I look forward to having it outsourced so there can be consistency across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Anybody else? Okay. Do we have a motion on this? Okay, we have a motion and a second on this.
Yes.
Let's have a roll call.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
No, just on the outsourcing part of it.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie
Yes. Okay. Moving on to quarter three strategic plan update.
So we ended the third quarter on September 30th, and I've provided kind of an update of where we are on our 4 strategies. And there's one new item that popped over into the red in trouble area. So from the last quarterly report, there were 2 items that we were intending to use ARPA funds for related to low to moderate income housing or an owner housing improvement program. Those are basically on ice at this point because we have allocated all of our ARPA funds to the State Street project following that bid. This one was also the local option sales tax being on the November ballot. Everything we're hearing from the Iowa League of Cities is that there will be another legislative effort to make changes to local option sales tax. So we're going to see where that goes in this next legislative session before moving forward with putting anything on a ballot. Ultimately, we would then have that discussion next year pending any legislative action. Otherwise, we did see a few items get completed, which was the urban renewal plan for the north side, including the development agreement for Carl, which was here tonight. Creekside Drive is not the official name yet, but generally the name we might use to describe the Creekside, the street in the Creekside State subdivision is substantially complete, and so that's going to move development forward there. Another thing that we looked at completion was the pickleball pocket park and Elks Park, the grading aspect of it. And then 2 things that started, I think are of note, the Citizens Fire Academy. That had been on hiatus for a few years, and that started in the 3rd quarter, as well as the National Community Survey. There are a number of what I'll call yellow items or things that miss deadlines that you will see likely coming back to you as things that we still have work to do or are still working on if we don't think will be done by the end of the year as part of that November 1st strategic planning process. So just an update. This will be the last comprehensive update you get before that November 1st meeting. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them here or offline.
Does anyone have any questions for Jennifer or Jessica? Sorry. Okay. Hearing none, let's move on to public comment. Members of the public may make comments on any item which was not on the agenda during this time. The speaker shall approach the microphone, state his or her name and address. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes unless longer comment is authorized by the mayor. The speaker shall direct comments to the mayor and the city council as a whole. The mayor and councils shall not engage in discussion or debate on items raised by members of the public, and no action may be taken on items raised in public comments in order to comply with open meetings law. With that, public comments is open.
Mark Eaton, 1007 South 10th Avenue. I know as we move forward, we're going to talk about bonding. That was already on the agenda today, but I'm not addressing that. The thing I'm concerned about is that I've reviewed the council agendas, and we have not had any financial statements since May, and that one was posted on the June 27th council meeting. Don't know if anything's changed up here or the rules, but I haven't seen any financial statements published since May. And my second comment is everyone might want to consider a write-in vote this November for supervisor and treasurer.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? Good.
Serena Stabenow, 1403 West Main Street. I sent in for a FOIA request and asked who owns the water department, and I was sent a reply, and I was told to look at the Iowa Code 388 and 384, and I want to know, why is the city water department different from the sewer department? Why do we need a board of trustees appointed by the mayor to set our water rates? Why do we not, or why not, we don't elect the board of trustees, but we elect the city council? The city council is able to set the sewer rates and storm rates. Why can't they set the water rates? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Lee Botter, 401 Orchard Drive. I do realize that Mark indicated he's not going to necessarily talk the bond. He was more about the financials. Mine is on the list of the description in the background of the things that were listed. First of all, I realize we didn't talk about it in the consent agenda, so that's why I'm bringing it up in the public forum. I do want to encourage everyone in Marshalltown to attend October 24th at 5:30 p.m. I would like to see the council chambers packed for that, just for the simple fact that there needs to be discussion. The challenge that I'm going to give council is the activities that are listed on the back, starting with the splash pad Riverview Park improvements, West End Park Phase 2. Can you please give us a detailed description of all activities and all purposes for those instead of just a general description? Give us detailed information on that. Again, I would encourage all citizens of Marshalltown to be available for the public forum that will be coming up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doris Kinnick, 2020 Catalina Place. October 13th, 1917, something awesome happened. It happened in Fatima, Portugal, and it was called the Miracle of the Sun. Might want to look that up. I bring this up because on Saturday, a public square rosary will be taking place outside of St. Francis of Assisi's parish office at noon, and everyone is invited. Join us for the 105th anniversary of the Miracle of the Sun, which Our Lady at Fatima, Portugal performed for unbelievers, to pray the rosary in a public square in a powerful way to promote its recitation and show our love and veneration for our God and our Blessed Mother. The Immaculate Heart of Mary will triumph over evil. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sarah Rosenblum, Marshalltown Public Library Director. I just want to tell you it's been almost 6 months since we hosted the Holocaust exhibition at the library. The feedback that I have received from the museum has been outstanding. They have been so complimentary about the number of people that came, the reactions that we get. I sent the TR article where Mike talked about being, Mayor Linehoff being inspired to help the Ukrainian citizens, and they were going to share that with their funders and stakeholders. They also asked for permission when they do their major fundraising brochure of the year. They highlighted our library. We're the only library they called out, the only place that the exhibit's been, and talked about us and, so used us as a prime example of the work that they're doing and how we've carried that on here in our community. And I've just been it's really been thrilling and exciting and very proud for us that we're been so recognized by the museum for our work.
Thank you. Anyone else? Meeting adjourned at 6:47.